Oh my god, where to begin? This is fucking crazy. But first, I thought I would introduce the podcast. So, this is our media podcast, and today I'm being joined by Mason via Skype. We haven't done a podcast in quite some time, but we're coming back. We've been busy. He's been working. I was on vacation. I had that short little update video on the YouTube channel to try and explain what was happening, but we've just been busy. I know I said in the update video that we're going to do the Assassin's Creed movie for the next media podcast and the Spanish Inquisition for our history podcast. However, we just recently saw X-Men, the new movie, X-Men Apocalypse, and we just had to do a podcast on this movie. And this sort of goes without saying, but spoilers ahead. And we will be doing the Assassin's Creed and Spanish Inquisition in the future. We just saw this, and it's all fresh in our mind, so we just thought, okay, let's just do this now. So the reason why I saw it so late, because it did come out, 2 weeks ago. I was busy on vacation, but moreover, I just wasn't super hyped to see these X-Men movies anymore. So I didn't feel the need to go and see it opening night, or even, right when I got back into Canada. So that's why I didn't really see it. I just don't care. So let's get into this podcast. It's going to be a pretty negative one, and we have a lot of things to say about it. Usually we're pretty positive, even though we have we criticize some things here and there, but overall we're positive. This one's going to be pretty much overall negative. So it's going to be the exact opposite. So first, I thought we could start off with continuity errors, and I'll let Mason start off with some of the ones that he noticed, and then I'll go into the ones that I noticed.
Alright, so I'm not even going to really try to establish an order to some of these continuity errors, because guess what, folks? The writers also don't care if you understand the continuity or understand the timeline or anything. So I'm just going to, from memory, I've got a couple notes here. I'm just going to bring up some questions that I have about this messy timeline that they created.
What the fuck? It's so annoying. Okay,
So, the first one that I remember is seeing Wolverine at the Weapon X facility. I have no idea why in the world Wolverine would be there. Days of Future Past had him rescued by Mystique. She was posing as Stryker, and she picked him up out of the river. So hasn't that timeline then been written over? Because I understand that if you follow the continuity established by the first 3 X-Men movies, and then going into Origins, and then going into the Wolverine, I know that that's still technically canon, but if you follow this sort of new timeline, or this alternate timeline that was created by Days of Future Past, Wolverine should still have his bone claws, and he should never have been picked up by Stryker. Another thing that Days of Future Past technically should have written over, but this movie didn't even commit to, was the Sentinels. And, don't get me wrong on this, I'm all for the Sentinels, they're pretty, standard for the X-Men lore, but in Days of Future Past, we saw the Sentinels of the 1970s, we saw those ones get destroyed, and we saw the future Sentinels, the ones that go on to take over the world and become super adaptable to different mutant powers. We saw those, just not happen. We saw them get wiped out of existence. So when they're in the danger room at the end, I don't understand why the Sentinels were there. Did they build their own Sentinels? Are these some kind of cheap knockoff that, maybe Beast made or something? Or did not all the Sentinels get destroyed? It raises more questions than it answers, and especially for a final scene, you need some, finality. You need answers, answered. You need your questions answered, rather. You can't just be posing more. So those are the two that really struck out to me that the movie really didn't care to explain, and that's why I didn't even really care to put them in any particular order. But, Xavier, I know you got some stuff to say about characters' ages.
I know. Okay, so first, I want to establish that we're doing, because we think that, what we think it is that First Class, Days of Future Past, and Apocalypse, those are all in one timeline.
Yeah.
The X-Men the Wolverine origins, the Wolverine, that's in its own timeline. So I know that there are different timelines in this whole X-Men universe, but even within these 3 movies, they have so many continuity errors that it's ridiculous. So one of them that I noticed right away was when they were giving out all the dates in the beginning of the movie, it's the age of Magneto and the age of Charles Xavier. It's what the hell is this? So in First Class, Magneto was in Auschwitz, and he was at least he looked at least he would have to be at minimum 5 up to 10. He'd be around that age. And then now it's 1980 something. So then he would be around 50, like almost 50, or if not 50. But then he's still this young Michael Fassbender character. Why don't you just change it to Ian McKellen? Like, you've already used him in Days of Future Past. You could just use him again for an older-looking gentleman. Same thing with Charles Xavier. You could just use Patrick Stewart instead of using James McAvoy still. It doesn't make sense. It's like you have all these older characters already, but they don't care. They just keep casting the same one. And then Mason pointed out that Scott Summers' brother, Havoc, he would be around 40 now, estimating that he's around the 20 range in Feature First Class. So that's also ridiculous. But in this one, he's also some young guy still. Like, he's like barely aged a day. He just grew his hair out, and now he's just chilling. But
I guess that, like, hair growth is supposed to be, like, the universal sign that someone has aged.
Yeah.
But, like, he's still... you know what? I'm actually going to fact check this. I'm going to look up how old the actor is. So, Xavier, continue on with your other errors that you noticed. I'm going to get the age of this actor who's supposed to be playing a 40-year-old.
Even the age of Mystique. But the age of Mystique can be more understandable because she can morph, and then who knows if her blue state, or, like, her natural state, is actually just... it doesn't age, so that's okay. And then also, they could have just changed the cast for this movie. They had the old and the new cast in Days of Future Past, so they could have just done that. Or if they wanted, they could probably just change all the actors anyway in this one, because they already changed Storm in this one. But I don't know, wouldn't it be cheaper? I don't know how it works actually, so I don't want to say that, but like, it could be cheaper to change, because these are expensive actors, right? Michael Fassbender, James McAvoy, all of those guys are pretty expensive, I'm guessing. Jennifer Lawrence, pretty expensive. You could change her, and you probably don't have to pay the actress as much, but then the quality of the movie might go down. But it's already a shitty movie, so I don't give a fuck. Just change it. Make some smart choices.
Alright, so Whitney Tell is Havoc, and the actor who plays Havoc is supposed to be 26 years old. So I don't understand why they didn't either use aging makeup, or, like, they didn't even have to do practical effects. They could have done generated effects.
Exactly.
And I don't know why they didn't go through the extra effort to do that, because this is a huge blockbuster movie, and movies have done it in the past. Like, Winter Soldier had a scene with Peggy Carter, and she's played by the same actress. There's no double, there's no nothing. That's all makeup, and that's all computer generated. And she legitimately looked like an 80, 90-year-old woman.
Exactly. That's all they could have... It's like, it's a massive movie, like you said. And it's like, has millions of dollars going into it. You have a massive team. Like, in the beginning of the movie, the actress who played Storm was like, yo, it took so many people to make this movie. I'm like, yeah, so why couldn't you have a makeup artist or something? Fuck. Jesus. But, like, there's Benjamin Button did it. Like, even... what was the movie about with Russell Crowe? And then it was, he's schizophrenic. John Nash. He was John Nash in that movie. I can't remember what it's called, but they did amazing makeup in that one too. So you could definitely do that.
Yeah, the technology exists. It's just, I guess it was a question of whether or not does the studio... I don't even know if it's does the studio care enough. It's would they have been marketable? Because I think that part of the appeal of these X-Men movies now is that they're the younger, not as seasoned versions of the characters that we saw in the original trilogy. So it's kind of hard to market them when they're older and maybe going through, like, middle age. Because now they can be kind of like the hip, the young, and, like, the sexy, kind of like characters with sex appeal. And, like, I guess from a marketing standpoint, that could be fine. But, I mean, it took me right out of the story. Like, seeing Havoc, he looks no different than when we see him in the 60s in First Class. And it's the same with everyone else. Like, their hair might grow out, and maybe Magneto had some gray in his beard, but I saw no visible signs of aging. It's almost like...
It's 20 years has passed. What the fuck? Yeah, okay. So we're done talking about the errors of time. So we'll go on to the other errors. Did you want to just say what you have to say about some other errors you saw?
Yeah, so aside from the really, really poor plot and story writing, where the timeline is just now, like, literally fucked up beyond any recognition, there's a lot of technical issues with this movie, too. Like, for example, we get another, like, one of those infamous Quicksilver scenes, like, where he just totally just comes in and saves the day, and he's going faster than light. fantastic scene, like sitting in the theater watching that, hearing everyone kind of chuckle and seeing all the goofy shit that he did, like, that was totally fine, but it was way over the top. Does he literally stop time with his powers? Like, that's what it looked like to me. The students he saves, they don't even move in real time with the explosion. So the scene shows him moving, and it shows the explosion slowly creeping through the house, but nothing else in the background, and I was paying attention to this. If you pay attention to everything else in the background, nothing else is moving. There's one scene where he goes into, like, a student's dorm room or something, and one of the students has thrown a dart, and the dart isn't even moving forward anymore, like, not even slowly. Like, time still moves when Quicksilver's running, it just moves much slower because he's going faster. But the scene didn't really show that. Everyone just kind of went as fast or as slow as the scene needed them to, so that they could all get out safe in the end.
Exactly. I just want to, like, make a... Sorry, did you have anything more to say about that?
No, go ahead.
I just want to get, like, go off of that. So when you're in mid-air... Sorry, when Quicksilver's in mid-air, how is it possible that he's moving at the same speed? That time is still not going, like, at all. Like, the explosion's still slowly moving. Because you have to go at least 10% of the speed of light for time to slow down. But he's still jumping around, flipping. So when he's in mid-air, but he's still traveling so fast, it's just not plausible. So whenever he's off the ground, it just doesn't make sense to me either. So that's all I had to add about the Quicksilver scene. It's like, but I agree, ridiculous.
Like, there's really, like, you could really pick it apart frame by frame. Like, the scene where he takes the bed sheet and he throws it around the tree so that the people that he threw out the window get caught and don't, like, basically, like, burn up with the heat of flying through a tree. That was really smart. But I mean, he throws the bed towel and it wraps around the tree, but it goes quick, but it's not going as fast as the students that are flying at it, because the bed sheet needed to get there before the students did. So they just shot and they wrote around how, like, fast it was. But anyways,
we were also talking about that, though. It's like how, like, everyone had powers conveniently at the time that they needed them throughout the whole movie. Everybody, it's like, oh, I'm falling through the sky, boom, no problem. I need to do this, boom, no problem, I have that power.
And that was my huge gripe with Apocalypse, because we can probably get into Apocalypse as a whole other topic later, but his weakness for me was in the fact that I don't actually really know what his power was. I'm pretty sure what his power was that he had a whole bunch of mutant abilities that he'd amassed through the bodies that he transferred into over the millennia. But we don't really get a sense of what those powers are. Like, he's kind of telepathic, but for whatever reason, he meets Charles Xavier. He can apparently push people into a wall and then harden the cement around them, and he can, like, push them into the wall, and he's, like, super strong. I don't know what his power was, but...
because, like, he also needed Magneto to, like, move the whole world around, but, like, couldn't he have done that too? Like, because he can move... Whenever he's killing people, he just moves sand or whatever it was and just mucked them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The story, basically, the way that the script writes Apocalypse is it needs him to be as powerful as he needs to be, but also as weak as he needs to be.
Yeah.
Which, if you look at the ending, when he gets defeated by Phoenix, I don't understand why then, if Charles Xavier knew how powerful Jean Grey was, why he didn't just get her to go up against him in the first place. Why did we have to wait 3 acts to see that? I didn't really understand that. But I think that my biggest problem with this movie is the special effects. Well, the lack of special effects, the lack of good special effects. So, the screen that Xavier and I saw this movie on last night couldn't even, like, it couldn't even project the images properly onto the screen. It looked like there were waves in the middle of, like, the screen. And I don't think it was a case of our screen being shitty, because, I mean, we saw this in a Cineplex, and that's a pretty... I don't know where else it is, but in Canada, that's a pretty big chain, and I mean, like, they have a lot of money, so I don't think it's an issue with the screen. I'm pretty sure it's an issue with the quality of whatever, special effects company they had working on it. The opening sequence in Egypt looked so terrible. Like, it was nauseating to watch. And kind of in line with this, the fight choreography wasn't that great, too. I think there's only 2 scenes in the entire movie I can remember where choreography was involved. And one was the scene where Wolverine breaks free from the Weapon X facility, and the other is when Beast is fighting Psylocke, kind of towards the end. So the Wolverine scene might as well have been shot with a fucking GoPro, because literally all we see is this scowly face, and, like, his rippling abs, but every time his like claws connect with someone, it cuts away. We don't even get to see it pierce flesh, and then we see blood on the walls.
I know,
like,
that's it.
Yeah, we see blood on the walls afterwards, but like we don't see any blood come out. Kind of like what you were what you were, I guess, gonna say about how like no one actually gets any physical injuries in this movie. Like I think someone gets a bloody nose and Quicksilver like breaks his leg.
Yeah.
That Wolverine scene should have been so bloody. It was in such close quarters, but you see nothing.
I know. I also, like, to go off the fight choreography, like, Daredevil's a TV show on Netflix, and it has, like, a better choreography for fight scenes than this blockbuster millions of dollar movie. It's, like, it's annoying to see. It's, like, you just don't care. Like, whoever did the blocking or the fight choreography of that, they just don't care, because, like, you just see Wolverine leaping, and then that's one cut. It's like nothing happens, and that he's just running through, and he's all angry. It's like so overused too. This whole Wolverine going on a killing spree. In every single movie that Wolverine's in, he's literally just running all angry, like just running through like whatever, trying to like kill as many people as possible, like going to his objective. It's just annoying to see. And like what Mason was saying, like there's sort of like puss bags in this, because nobody suffers like a visible wound, like a cut or anything. And was Cyclops, she had like a sword and her psychic like sword, and then she never cuts anybody. Nothing ever happens. Like the only like real blood is when Angel's fighting in that cage and he killed that, like, I guess the Blob. Was that supposed to be the Blob, or whoever was? And there's the only blood, and he hurt his wing, and that was it. He has fucking knives now on his wings, but like never used. Nobody gets hurt at all. And now I'll just go into like what I had to, some other errors I also had with it. So like I was saying, how there were a bunch of like freaking puss bags and they didn't want to show anything terrible. So this is the end of the freaking world. Why aren't there more like dead bodies being spewed around? Where is the massive death toll? Even though the plan wasn't fully carried out. Oh my god, sorry. Even though the plan was not fully carried out, there still would have been massive damage that happened around the world. You see in Australia, there's like everything's just going up. San Francisco, all around the world, all the buildings are moving, the docks are moving, all this stuff is going to shit. But there's no dead bodies, there's not a single dead body. And then when Apocalypse created that massive pyramid in the middle of Cairo, there's no bodies in Cairo at all. There's nobody there.
No, conveniently.
They evacuated the whole fucking city of Cairo, just conveniently, right before he showed up. What's up with that? Fucking, sorry, no more F-bombs. But it's like, it's kind of ridiculous. Like, how come there's nothing? Like, you have to show the devastation. It's called Apocalypse. Like, this is the end of the world. This is supposed to be the end of the world. You're on the brink of the edge of destruction. And there's nothing? It's like, wow. Just ridiculous. Okay. Also, the other thing I didn't like is how Magneto in this timeline is always portrayed as good, then bad, then good, then bad. But he's a supervillain. He should just be bad. Like, in the beginning, fine, First Class, you see how he progresses to be bad, and then he's bad. And then he should just stay bad, and then he could continue to be bad. He should continue to fight for mutants and just not give a fuck about any humans. He's only pro-mutant, that's it. So that's what they should do. They should just keep him there, instead of conveniently having him when they need him to stop destroying the world, and then he goes back to being bad. Or like, back and forth, back and forth. So it's just terrible. Another problem I had was relating to the choreography. There's no good fight scene. What is this bullshit? It's a fucking action movie. It's a comic book action movie. And there's like only one fight, and it was at the end. It was like the end of a Dragon Ball Z episode where everybody's just channeling all the power towards Apocalypse. It's like, or like Goku and everybody is just trying to destroy Piccolo right at the end of an episode. It's like, fucking, what the hell is this? Everyone's just blasting power in one direction. Like, they just don't care. That's all they can do. They just CGI'd it.
Yeah, that's why I think the fight scenes, like, they're so underwhelming, and like, it literally is just like watching a Dragon Ball Z episode. Like, everyone is channeling this immense amount of power that they can't contain, so they're yelling, and they're all sweaty, and then it's hitting someone, but they've got like a force field. Like, there's no kind of like, I don't know how to say it, but there's no creative way of showing how powerful these characters are. They're just kind of hurling all these powerful projections at each other and yelling, and it's just so, it's uninteresting to watch, and like, what you're saying about Dragon Ball Z, like, it's acceptable when you know you're watching a cartoon episode of Dragon Ball Z, because you know the budget's not as high as this movie. But here I at least expected, like, some punches to be thrown, like, someone to maybe, like, flip in the air or something, you know, without looking like they were on a wire, which, for that Beast and Psylocke scene, I swear to God, they were on a wire that whole time. I did not believe one single stunt or flip, or even, like, a little jump that they did. It literally looked like they were hanging on a wire.
Yeah, like, the only, like, real fighting scene was, like, Quicksilver, and it was just, like, the classic Flash vs. Superman movie sort of thing, where Flash is just running around punching, and then Superman's like, nope, and just flicks him off. It's like, that was the only real fight scene. So, oh yeah, so I had one more thing, how Magneto is still allowed to just walk away after all this.
Oh my God.
Like, he just killed that whole tribe of policemen with like, a necklace. And then he's murdered other people. He caused all this destruction worldwide. Who's paying for that? Not him.
Like,
what the fuck
this is the third move now where he has, like, just totally, completely, like, wiped out some untold number of people and literally almost brought the world to an end. And he's standing there with Charles Xavier, who, without his helmet, like, without Magneto's helmet, Charles Xavier could easily just stop him from leaving, but he chooses not to. Because, you know, like you said, like, they don't want any of these movies to end with anybody too sad or anybody too banged up. They need everything, like, wrapped up in a bow or whatever, and they let him leave for the third time. Like, do you not understand? He's just going to come back. He's going to cause more problems for you if you don't stop him.
Exactly. That's another gripe I had with it, but whatever. That's the movie. And Mason had listed some positives, so I'll just let him say them. I have no positives to say about this movie. Like I'll just agree with Mason. Like, the soundtrack was pretty cool, but that's about it for me.
Yeah, well, at least you're honest, I guess. I was critical of this movie, but, like, being critical doesn't always mean that you're being negative, right? Like, you're watching it and you're being open-minded. But for me, like, believe it or not, in this mess of a total shitstorm, there are some things that make it a worth watch. And there's just a few things that I liked. In no particular order, I have to give some kudos to, like, the soundtrack, especially in the opening sequence. I thought it was very good and, like, very well done. And it was kind of thematic, too. Like, every time Apocalypse was on screen, you got this very kind of, like, epic, adventure-y Egyptian theme. And it was very fitting, I found, for the character. And a lot of character themes from previous movies come back, and they kind of do a bit of a spin on them. So the soundtrack, I thought, was very good. We get a few new additions. Well, they're not technically new additions to the cast, because we get to see young Jean Grey and, like, young Cyclops. And they were actually really likable for kid actors. I have a huge skepticism about younger actors, because they're not as seasoned as some of, like, the well-established actors. But these young actors had a lot of charisma, and they were very likable. And honestly, I'd like to see another installment with them. I found them really compelling. Another thing was Apocalypse. He was really menacing, and he was really powerful. Even though his powers were really extremely, like, arbitrarily defined and, like, not defined at all, he did pose, like, an actual threat to the X-Men, and he didn't really go out like a bitch. Like, this whole movie is literally them trying to bring him down, and they try, like, 3 or 4 times, but it's not until the end with the Phoenix Force that they actually succeed. Psylocke's hot, so there's that. Like, she has literally no reason being in this movie, but, like, that woman's fucking fine. I'm not gonna complain that she's on screen looking that way.
Yeah, even the way they costumed her too is, like, purposely, like, in a swimsuit the whole time, you know.
I guess that was, like, their way of getting us to forgive them for having such a weak side character. I don't know. It was pretty nice to look at, so I'm not really going to complain too much. There's a really meaningful theme throughout the movie about how being in control isn't always the answer, and that sometimes we do have to just release ourselves from these restraints that we put on ourselves. In the end scene, the X-Men are instructed to not act with restraint, but instead to just realize the full potential of their powers. And Professor X, like, when he's fighting Apocalypse, like, he's not holding back at all. Like, he's going all out. Like, he's ready to kill someone. So it was nice to see him not be his usual, like, contained and very, like, calm and in control self. There's great character writing in the movie. Like, I said the writing was weak, and I guess from, like, a story and plot perspective, the story is very weak. But the writers did understand the characters that they were writing for and how they would interact with each other and where they would end up after a situation like this. So I did really appreciate that. And there was also a really great scene in a forest with Magneto, and Magneto's family gets killed, basically. And I just thought that that was so well done. Like, everything about it, the acting, the camera work, like, the cinematography for that scene is so simple. Like, it's literally just a bunch of actors on a wide shot in a forest, and it just goes back and forth between who's talking. And I just thought it was so, like, beautifully done. That's probably my favorite scene in the whole movie. But yeah, there's there's some positives. There's not many, but there's a few. So I'm just gonna give my final thoughts real quick. I like this movie way better than Days of Future Past. I thought that movie was so sloppy, like even sloppier than this movie, which, if you can imagine, is still possible. And it was just so overrated. I felt like the hype for that movie was just so unwarranted. But Apocalypse is definitely still a bottom tier X-Men movie to me. I'm going to give it a 5.5 out of 10, so 55%, which equates to a D grade. It's watchable. Like, it's not something that, you know, is so bad that it's funny. Like, there are still things to enjoy in it, but from a technical standpoint, it's pretty fucking bad. At this point, I still only really love 2 X-Men movies, and I use love very loosely. The movies that I would say that I, like, quote-unquote love are First Class and Deadpool.
I love Deadpool, though. That's the only one.
Yeah, I don't have the same affinity for Deadpool that everyone else does, but that was a stellar movie, and, like, it's really, like, what's keeping the ship afloat for X-Men, really. There's promise for future installments, though. Like I said, I do really like these new actors, and maybe if they focus on them and tidy up this timeline a little bit, I can see a future movie being a little bit better. They've dug themselves a pretty big hole, but maybe a feature with, like, the young ones, if the screenwriters actually start to give a shit, could be a little bit more promising. But, Xavier, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't write anything down for this, but I'm just gonna, like, wing it. But I would, like, overall, I would agree, like, it's not the worst movie I've ever seen. It's I would probably not rewatch this. This is like, you see it once, you're like, okay, cool, I watched it, and that's it for me. I'm not gonna, like, grade it or anything, but it would be on the lower end. Like, of all the stuff that we pointed out, like, there are, like, some cool scenes. Like you said, the Magneto scene in the forest was pretty cool. Like, yeah, that's about it. But other than that, it's, like, First Class is definitely my favorite of the timeline. Days of Future Past was terrible. Wolverine Origins was cool, and then Deadpool came out, so that one trumped it because I did like Deadpool in it. But other than that, that's about it. That's all I really have to say. Like, I'm not excited. I'm not going to be, like, hyped for another X-Men movie that when they announce it. It's like, whatever, I'll go see it, like, when I see it. Like, I'll just buy it on, like, just stream it when I want to.
Yeah, I think at this point we don't really go to see the X-Men movies because we're excited for them. I think it's more so just, that's the movie that all of our friends are going to go see, and we're not going to be the two that just sit it out. Like, yeah. We're kind of just obligated to at this point. Exactly. We don't really want to.
No, if we go see it in theaters, it'll be, like, on, like, the cheapest day possible.
Oh, for sure.
And just, yeah, so it's, like, it's kind of sad that it's, like, it's come to this, because I thought, like, X-Men X1, 2, and Last Stand, I thought those ones were pretty cool, and then it started, well, actually, X-Men Last Stand was not that amazing, but, like, X-Men 1, 2, Alright, so I don't really know what happened there, but it's gonna have to. We have 2 different clips. I'll put them together so it'll be all in the same video. We sort of just cut out there. My computer just froze and then just died. And but now we're back, and now we're just gonna finish this up real quick. So I was saying, like, X-Men 1, 2, and Final Stand. Even though Final Stand wasn't that good, like, those are the ones that I liked, and it's kind of just sad to sort of see the decline of X-Men movies. Like, it's, everyone used to be so hyped, right? It's like, oh, the new one's coming out and everything, and it's like, now it's like, oh, it's coming out, like, I'll go see it, like, whenever I want now. It's not like it's a big deal. And especially with, like, what they're doing now with X-Men, like, the path that they're going down now, it's like, it's kind of bad. So I hope that they change up something. Like, they do so many Spider-Man reboots, they could probably just do a new X-Men reboot. Like, they've done 3 movies for this one. Amazing Spider-Man 2 had 2 movies. And they just said, fuck it, we're starting with Tom Holland now. So they could definitely do that with X-Men. So I wouldn't be too bad to see that. So, did you have any closing remarks, Mason?
Yeah, I think that, like, it's definitely going down a path of decline, like you said, but it's still salvageable. I just don't know if, like, quality is something that's on their agenda. Like, I wonder if they're just so interested in maintaining the rights to the X-Men characters, they're just churning out like mediocrity and churning out crap so that they keep the rights. So hopefully, maybe like some new directors or new writers can be brought on, because I think that that's maybe what would help. If you look at their track record, like First Class, that's a fantastic movie. That wasn't the same team that did the original 3 X-Men movies. And then you look at Deadpool, that was a completely different team.
Yeah.
If you look at movies like even the standalone Wolverine movie, not Origins Wolverine, but The Wolverine, that was a totally different director. I think he brought on his own writer as well. And like it shows, those are the movies that leave an impression on people, good or bad, but they leave an impression on people because they're different, and I think that that's what the series needs. Like, I'm sure that Bryan Singer has found his niche doing action movies, but I don't know, I think maybe doing the X-Men franchise, he's a little tired, but I don't know. I still have a small hope, but it's fleeting.
I think it's like better if they just start over, honestly. Like, it's like you're trying, because like you said, you have to dig yourself out of such a deep hole now, especially with all these errors, like the continuity, which is the biggest one. Like, you have all these errors, so it's honestly just easier to just start anew. You could like recast. You could actually even keep the whole cast, but just say it's a new timeline, and then that's it. You just start like a fresh start. Anyway, you also said like we should say what we're doing next. So next week is going to be our history podcast. We're going to do the Spanish Inquisition, so that'll be cool. And then, you know what? What if we do Spanish Inquisition and Assassin's Creed in one, but like Assassin's Creed like as a history one too? So we tie it into history and how it could fit.
That was our original plan. What we were going to do was we were going to do kind of like a history media hybrid. We were going to talk about our thoughts on the new Assassin's Creed trailer, because
it's short,
if you listen to our Assassin's Creed Empire podcast, you would know that we're both huge fans of the franchise. So obviously we're not just going to sit quiet as a new trailer comes out for a movie adaptation. So we're going to try and integrate in a creative way. We're not quite sure how we're going to do it yet, but we're going to try and integrate our thoughts on the trailer, but also give some historical context and some commentary on the Spanish Inquisition, like the actual period. Get excited for that next week. It's a special event.
Okay.
Alrighty.
So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Peace out, guys.